Hi, alright folks, welcome back to Glesga News. Right, okay, the magazine stroke paper I'm talking, or online page I'm looking at now is called the Indian Punchline. And this particular article, which is very insightful and gives a serious insight into the real situation, is by MK Bradkumar, and he's titled it Ukraine Faces Defeat. Right, okay, so that does sound kind of melodramatic, but we'll talk about that in the article. Now, this picture here is taken in the room that the talks are taking place in Belarus. On the left, we have the Ukrainian people, and on the right, we have the Russian delegates. It's a profound picture, but let's move on, right? Belying the predictions of Western media, Russia's special operation in Ukraine is entering a successful endgame on the political and diplomatic track much sooner than one would have thought. A close reading of the outcome of the third round of peace talks in Belarus last night is that the Ukrainian negotiators have sought some more time to come up with a full response to the Russian terms for a ceasefire. Ukraine has signalled willingness to be a neutral country, ruling out NATO membership. The main sticking points narrow down to A. Recognition of Crimea as part of Russia, and B. Sovereignty of the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics. They are non-negotiable demands, but they are a bitter pill for the Ukrainian leadership to swallow. The Ukrainian stance is that these demands are practically impossible. But as Vladimir Medinsky, leader of the Russian team, told RT, which is Russian television, in my opinion, there is a big difference between impossible and practically impossible. I hope that eventually we will find a solution. The Russian side feels encouraged, albeit yesterday's talks produced no tangible results. They are in no hurry to rush into major military offensives. The pattern throughout has been that the Russian generals would apply coercive military power to create synergy to kick-start a parallel political/diplomatic track to attain Moscow's objective, which is not about territorial conquest. And that's what the West tries to tell you. It's about Russia trying to get a hold of Ukraine and taking over and making it Russian. No, it's not. There are certain areas, the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics in the Crimea. But that's because there's been a 8-year war fought in the east of Ukraine. And they've had enough with the Lugansk and Donetsk people against the Ukrainian military. The Western, and that's despite the Minsk II agreement that was signed by the Ukrainians, but they've not put it into practice, right? So they're not trustworthy as far as the Russians are concerned, and neither is the West, because NATO's went back on all its promises. So if everybody goes back on their promises, if you sign things or agree to some terms and then you just ignore it and do what you want, then don't complain when they do what they want. It goes on to say, the Western analysts who expected the Russian generals to behave like George Patton or MacArthur with a massive attack on Kiev instead witnessed a confusing Russian strategy, slow, halting operations without excessive force and with a distinct preference to avoid fighting by encircling and bypassing pockets of resistance and avoiding set battles. The Ukrainian side realises that the Russian strategy is winning, as Russian forces are encircling Kiev from the northwest, west and east. The Black Sea ports are no longer accessible and the forces in the east are entrapped. Yesterday, Zelensky acknowledged the grim situation. After the third round in Belarus, he hastened to assure that talks will continue until a settlement, in his words. He goes on to say, this is Zelensky, and this is a quote. Today, the third round of negotiations took place in Belarus, and I would like to say the third and final one, but we are realists. Therefore, we will talk, we will insist on negotiations until we find a way to tell our people this is how we will come to peace. End quote. Russians are in no tearing hurry. They eschew triumphalism and instead allow enough space for the Ukrainian side to take some really hard decisions on surrender, while military pressure is kept up on Kiev. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said yesterday, we keep the door, quote, we keep the door open to diplomatic options. As soon as there are corresponding signals, we will be acting on them, end quote. Importantly, the two sides have agreed on a roadmap for creating humanitarian corridors, and the Russian side has announced a ceasefire. Also, these corridors will be operated in close coordination through a hotline. So, this is the important part, I think. Thoroughly disillusioned with what he sees as betrayal by the US and NATO, Zelensky is inching towards an agreement with Moscow. It is futile to prejudge the outcome, but there is a game changer. The major European countries, UK, France, Germany and the Netherlands, have rebuffed Washington's hawkish proposal to impose sanctions on Russia's oil exports. Oil exports are Russia's principal source of income. Therefore, this is a strong rejection of Washington's efforts to isolate Russia. French President Macron captured the Zephyr in his remarks yesterday. I don't know what they mean by Zephyr. That used to be a car from the 70s, Ford Zephyr. But he's obviously using that in a different context. And here's what Macron said, quote, it is impossible to build a lasting peace if Russia doesn't participate in building a comprehensive security architecture on our continent, because history and geography mandate this. Our responsibility is to preserve all the ties that we can preserve. We must continue to talk with the Russians and Belarusian people. We need to do this with the help from representatives of the world of culture, the scientific and technical community, and non-governmental organisations. End quote. And here's another crucial paragraph. On Sunday, in an op-ed in the New York Times, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson wrote, quote, we have no hostility towards the Russian people, and we have no desire to impugn a great nation and a world power. Ukraine has no serious prospects of NATO membership in the near future. This is not a NATO conflict, and it will not become one, end quote. But you notice how he still cannot say the words that we need to say, we need to hear for this to de-escalate. And that would have been simply, Ukraine has no serious prospect of NATO membership. There is no prospect of Ukraine getting NATO membership. But he puts a caveat in there, and that's why he's responsible for it, right? Ukraine has no serious prospect of NATO membership in the near future. It will never get in NATO. That's why Russia's there. That's how stupid he is, right? Meanwhile, major European countries, especially Germany, are ruling out even EU membership for Ukraine, which ironically was the issue that precipitated the US-backed coup in Kiev in 2014, triggering the catastrophic slide towards conflict involving Russia. So, what that basically is telling you is that what you're seeing in the mainstream media is a sort of reflection of how America fights wars. You see, what America does is when they start a war, they want regime change. Russia's not interested in regime change. They're keeping the Kiev and the Ukrainian government in power, right? Because they want to be able to negotiate with them. They don't want to take over Ukraine. There's certain areas now that are going to be cut away because of that 8-year war. Crimea's already gone. That's part of Russia. But that's not the way America fights wars. What America does is it goes in a war, regime change. We want the government out. So the first thing they do is they come in at night with stealth and tomahawks. CNN go up to a roof somewhere. They put their camera. Then they go away for a drink. And during the night, You see all the main buildings, all the infrastructure, all the bridges getting wiped out by the Americans, right? That's what they do. And then they come in later on, want regime change, get him out, we want regime change. Well, the Russians aren't doing that. And that's what confuses Americans. I mean, if Russia was fighting America, it would be a different war. If Russia was fighting NATO, it would be a completely different war. It wouldn't be the same then, right? But this is like a sister/brother country to Russia. You know, there's millions upon millions of Russian people in there. That's why they're not doing a shock and awe type deal. Of course, people are getting hurted, people are getting killed, civilians and innocent people are dying. But that's a result of this war, right? That was precipitated by America and the likes of Britain saying stupid things like, there's no prospect yet. Instead of saying, right, okay, we agree, let's see about making Ukraine a neutral country. That'll be great for Ukraine. They'll be completely secure. Russia will be happy, right? A neutral country doesn't need to threaten anybody. Switzerland doesn't threaten anybody. You know, that's the type of deal. And people can pump as much money into Ukraine and their people can be happy. But instead of doing that, they went, no, we're not doing that. We're not telling you whether we will let them in or we won't let them in. We might let them in. We might not let them in. So much for your strategy, Joe Biden, and all your Ukrainian experts. Where's that wee Colonel Vidmar, by the way? Is he on the front line? Do you remember Colonel, or is it Lieutenant Colonel, or whatever he liked to say? The wee guy with the specs that sat in Congress, right? And says, we need more guns, we need more this, we need... Is he on the front line? I don't think so. Where are you, Vidmar? Anyway. Just kicked off a wee bit there, folks. If you like the content, hit the like button, share and subscribe, because that's definitely all I've got to say about that. Peace out. How dare you!